Well, welcome to the last hope of a dying republic, folks. I am your host, Reverend Bill Cook, the founder and CEO of America's Black Robe Regiment. My beautiful wife, Judy, is here with me. We're so glad you joined us. We're so excited to be part of the Morning in America broadcast series on America Out Loud and hope that you will join us weekly. In case you're wondering what the Black Robe Regiment is, the Black Robe Regiment was the name the British gave to the American clergy during the American War for Independence because they blamed them for what they called the rebellion, which we call the fight for liberty. And so that's how the name came. We've adopted the name as a badge of honor in America's Black Robe Regiment. Today, the Black Robe Regiment is raising up pastors, courageous pastors, to secure liberty to our own generation and the next. They are the last hope of our now dying republic. But we are not just raising up pastors, we're also raising up patriots. And you may be just the one needed to save this republic. I believe all of us have a part to play. For more information on America's Black Robe Regiment, visit our website at brrusa.org. Our guest today is a friend from Canada, of all places, a wonderful brother that we met in the last few years as part of something called the Reawakening Tour. And we're so glad you could join us today. Artur Pawlowski is his name.
Pastor Artur Pawlowski, a Polish-Canadian evangelical minister, stands as a symbol of unwavering faith and commitment in God to today's woke world. Born in Gossachov, could you pronounce that for me? I don't want to butcher it.
Kożuchów.
Poland in 1973, Artur moved to Canada in 1995, embracing his new homeland and becoming a citizen by 2004. His religious endeavors in Calgary including leading the Cave of Adullam congregation and founding the Street Church Ministries, have touched countless lives. His dedication to causes, both religious and political, has earned him numerous accolades, including the honorary chaplain position for Alberta and the Free Speech Award in 2012. A staunch advocate for traditional values and freedom of speech, Artur's activism has seen him at the forefront of various protests and rallies. Beyond his religious commitments, Artur ventured into politics, leading the Independence Party of Alberta and later founding the Solidarity Movement of Alberta in 2023. His life serves as an inspiration, reminding us of the power of conviction, the importance of free speech and religious freedom, and standing with God.
Amen. So, Artur, thank you for joining us today. Glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I was just listening to your explanation of the Black Robe Regiment, and it's fascinating because for the enemy, for the evil, for the wicked, for the slave masters, if you will, or the wannabe pharaohs of today, what we're doing is rebellion. However, for God, for righteousness, for the truth, is a stand for liberation. So it depends on which side of the fence you find yourself in, or if you're sitting on the fence, you got to remember the fence belongs to the enemy, to Satan. So the view, the perspective of things, it's different, depends on which side of the fight you find yourself in. So, of course, I'm fascinated with the history of United States of America, how it was founded, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, which is nothing like I have ever seen around the world. So thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Well, it's an honor and a delight to have you on the podcast today, and we're excited to hear your story. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is you when the COVID virus came and hit in our countries, you basically had an order from your government to shut your churches down. So what did you do in response to that order?
Well, first of all, before we go, what happened, 2020, we got to go back in history just a little bit. You got to remember, and I'm sure for the English-speaking people, right away you can pick it up, my accent. I grew up with my wife behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of a totalitarian regime, communism and socialism. So for people like us, for the immigrants that escape horrors of tyranny, or, one word that always comes to mind when people ask me about how it was growing up behind the Iron Curtain is hell. So when you escape hell, you come to freedom. You come to the country that is offering you, liberation, if you will. And when that hell comes back and chases you again, you can recognize it immediately, right away. So at the beginning of 2020, with my wife and other immigrants that escaped from other countries, the horrors of police state, tyranny, a totalitarian regime, it was given. I mean, we could recognize that demon, because that's what it is. It's a principality, right away. And I said, oh, here we go again. The same thing we have seen growing up under the boot of the Soviet communism and socialism. So when the governments, because that's what happened, but specifically in a country that we are living in, when the government declared that churches are non-essential, but abortion clinics, liquor stores, Walmarts, Costco's, and mosques and temples for the Hindus, all of those things were essential, but the church was unessential, and the government declared that we must stop congregating. The Canadian government went as far as declaring Lord's Supper to be illegal. Can you believe it? They declared that singing was illegal. You could not congregate and sing praises to your God. And I'm a little bit weird in a sense that I'm different. I actually, I'm so different from other pastors. I actually read the Bible. I actually believe in the Bible. Right now, most of the pastors don't read the Bible. They buy sermons, on internet for $20. You can have a PowerPoint presentation in a heartbeat. You don't have to spend time and do any research and pray. I'm different. It takes me sometimes weeks to prepare a message, and I'll go back and forth, and the Holy Spirit will tell me what He wants to say to the churches. Amen. Today. So I read the Bible many times, and correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere there in the Bible, in quote, it says, do not forsake the gatherings of the saints. And for me, that's a full stop. Somewhere in the Bible, it says, remember. When you gather, remember, what happened on the cross. I mean, we are saved not by coming to a church. Quite often I tell the people, you can go to church every single day. You can go to McDonald's. You can be born in McDonald's, but that will never change you or turn you into a Big Mac. So it doesn't matter if you keep going to the church. It means absolutely nothing unless you are willing to obey the commandments of God, the word of God. And for me, that's a full stop. It doesn't matter what the government says. What it matters is simply what God is commanding us to do. And He says very clearly, do not forsake the gatherings of the saints. Remember what I did on the cross, the blood, the name that is above every other name, the beaten body, by my stripes you're healed. And of course, He lives, He dwells in the worship of His people. So worship is very important. I mean, the story of Yehoshaphat, the king, he did not, send his mightier, the strongest warriors ahead of the army. He sent worshipers, and then God did fight his battle. So when the Canadian government came and they said, you have to shut down, you cannot do this and you cannot do that, what I did, recognizing the principality, the demons, I decided to do the opposite. So when the government said you cannot congregate, we started to meet extra days. We were meeting at that time 8 times a week. 8 times a week we were meeting, and I live streamed it, the whole thing. When the government declared a Lord's Supper to be illegal, I decided to have Lord's Supper every single time we meet. When the government declared singing illegal, I asked the worshipers to do double shifts. Let's sing more songs. And I live streamed the whole thing for the whole world to see, because I decided to do what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did. Nations, it says, did bow before the golden image of Nebuchadnezzar, or golden image of the muzzle, golden image of the needle, whatever you want to call it, 6 feet apart. But they said no, they decided not to do it. And of course, if you know the story, Nebuchadnezzar gave them another chance. And that reminds me of what I was witnessing around the world. Do the right thing. I'm giving you another chance. Do the right thing. Stay home, save lives. Well, that's not what I find in the Bible. Actually, in the Bible, it doesn't say stay ye, it says go ye. So I just did what God commanded us to do. And of course, the enemy was not happy. Enemy was not happy with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Off they went to the fire furnace. And quite often I told the people, especially during that time, that, it was not outside of the fire, but was in the fire that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were set free. And that's Amen. A paradox of a lot of things in the Bible. It seems impossible. It seems weird. It seems crazy, impossible. However, that's how God likes it, because then he gets the glory. So they were not set free outside of the fire. They were set free in the fire. Also in the fire, they had this unbelievable, amazing encounter with the living God, face to face with Jesus. Also, it was in the fire that they have become the biggest testimony during that time. And as you know, Nebuchadnezzar has become the most powerful evangelist of, all his time. I mean, whoever refuses to worship God of Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, I'll chop it to pieces. I mean, that's an amazing incentive for the people.
Sure.
And then in the fire, they received their promotion. So God gave me this revelation. Instead of running away from trouble, running away from the battlefield, running away from the fire, we Christians should run towards the fire. So that's the revelation I received, and that's what I decided to do. I call it head-on collision, Artur Pawlowski style. So what that means is I just did opposite. Whatever they were telling me to do, I did opposite. So when they canceled Christmas, I invited people to come to the biggest Christmas celebration in the country. I remember the politicians, municipal, provincial, and the federal, went on television and they said to the children just a few weeks before that, hey kids, have a wonderful Halloween, be safe out there. A few weeks after this, the same people on television, they said, we're canceling Christmas, you're not allowed to celebrate. Actually, the Canadian government said you cannot have a coffee with your brother, no Christmas dinners and all that stuff. So I went on television and I said to the people, listen, who do you think you uncircumcised Philistines think you are? You're some kind of green Grinches. You can't cancel God. You cannot cancel Christmas. So I invited people to come to the biggest Christmas celebration in the country. And, to make it easy for the wannabe tyrants, we did it at City Hall. And thousands of people showed up. And I think I broke some kind of a record for a church gathering because we had 120 police officers, 20 cops on bicycles. We had anti-terrorists, SWAT team. We had the chief of police. And, it was Christmas after all. So they came bearing gifts. And I end up with 15 COVID tickets worth millions upon millions of dollars. So it took me years. I'm still in court, by the way, fighting those minions of Satan 6 years later. So then 2021 comes. And you got to remember, our church, me personally, my family, my brother David was arrested with me, 13 times. Our oldest son already has been arrested over 20 times. Every time he crosses the border from United States to Canada, he gets arrested. To this day, he came for Christmas, he got detained by the Canadian authorities. So that's the price you must be willing to pay. That's the price of following the commandments of the living God. So 2021 comes, and keeping in mind, our church, our family has been hunted down for over a year now, and they decided to invade our church during the holiest time of the year, Passover celebration of 2021, April. I think it was 5th of April. I'll never forget that Saturday, because I usually come about 2 hours before the church starts, and we're praying there. The worshipers are practicing, and I'm setting things up, and I put my cell phone on the pulpit to be fully charged. And then I turn to my left and I look, and it took me a split of a second to actually understand what I'm seeing, because I looked at the people, weird people, all muzzled up. You got to remember, no one in our church would wear a muzzle. And I've told authorities, we're nobody's dog. If you want to wear a triple muzzle, that's totally perfect with me. That's up to you. But we're free people. I refuse to play. I refuse to dance your polka. I refuse to play your game. It's a theater. It's a lie. It's a big fat lie. If you know anything about science, if you know anything about biology, virology, the virus is 1,000 times smaller than the bacteria. That stupid thing on your face cannot and will not protect you from anything. So you want to play this game of lies? Go ahead, but I refuse. So when I look at those people, they were all muzzled up like monkeys in a circle. So and I grabbed my phone and I started to record. I saw the uniforms. There was Calgary police, there was bylaw services, there was health inspector, the top one, and there was some bunch of other undercover, agents of the state. And I gotta remember, they have been hunting us for over a year. And at that time, I had a sermon prepared titled "Let Pharaoh, Let My People Go." So it came out of me. I didn't want to talk to them. I didn't want to, have another conversation with those people. We had plenty conversations already, and I just told them to get out, and they would not move. So I became more, straightforward. Get out, get out, get out. And I think someone counted, I told them over 30 times to get out. Eventually they go. And I tell you the truth, I didn't think much about that interaction. They left. I was a happy camper. We had a church service. I shut off my cell phone. I posted the video. And then after the service, I opened my phone and I could not believe there were hundreds of invitations from the biggest news outlets on earth. Newsmax and Fox News and other places from around the world. They wanted to talk to me. And I talked to my wife and I said, what did I do? I don't know what I did. I didn't know. I was clueless of what was going on because I had many interactions with those minions of Satan before. So to me, it was just another encounter. But for the world, it was a beacon of hope. What later I learned, it was that little interaction, me as a clergy telling them, go, get out, spark hope in millions of hearts around the world.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're speaking to Pastor Artur Pawlowski about his experiences during the COVID epidemic or whatever you want to call it, early deception. So Artur, continue.
Yeah, if you would say to me that me yelling at those, in quote, of course, nice officers is going to give me an opportunity to preach, literally to preach to millions of people around the world, I would say, you're crazy. Stop drinking what you're drinking. Obviously, this is not healthy, whatever you're smoking or taking. I would not believe you. I would just not believe you. However, that's exactly what happened. From that day on, I had opportunity to preach to tens of millions of people around the world. That encounter with those wicked agents of the state was watched over 1 billion times. So
Wonderful.
Imagine this was the #1 played video on earth during that Passover weekend. I mean, I just could not believe it. So then I did interviews, 10, 15 interviews a day for weeks, months. And of course, the government was not happy. 3 weeks later, they came back. And they came with anti-terrorists. They found the crooked judge, John Rook, the crook as I call him, and then David Gates. And I don't know if that devil, that judge, is connected or related to your domestic terrorist, Bill Gates. But David Gates of Alberta, the crooked judge, gave them the power to enter our church anytime they want, illegally, and with whomever they wish to disrupt religious gatherings. So anti-terrorists showed up. They demanded us to stop it. I refused. I said, you will have to arrest me. They came with some bogus document. Later on, we find out that the judge gave them the order to shut down the church, and we refused. So we were charged with contempt of court order. And then they tried to enter the church, but at that time it was standing room only, a lot of people outside. The anti-terrorists decided that this is going to be a bloody mess. They withdraw themselves and they waited. People went home, and on the way home, we were arrested with my brother David and charged with contempt of court order, officiating in illegal gathering, participating in illegal gathering, all those crazy things that I remember growing up behind the Iron Curtain, being viewed as illegal by communists and socialists. And you got to also remember, I'm a Polish immigrant, so I grew up hearing the stories of the Nazis, what the Germans did to the war, to the Polish people. I visited Auschwitz-Birkenau many times with my family, with children, with Americans. I would take Canadians for them to see what happens when you don't bring accountability to the political realm. What happens when there are no checks and balances? So having that background, what I recognize those officers doing, it was identical to what I remember hearing from my grandparents and the older generation, and also what I remember seeing police officers doing during communism era. That's why I call them psychopaths. I call them Nazis. I call them Gestapo, because Gestapo means political police. It was nothing to do with law and order or enforcing law or protecting law. This was strictly political. They were just following crooked politicians that were bought and paid for. So I decided to oppose them. Of course, I received through the years over 360 citations, over 120 court cases, and I was arrested more times than I remember. And again, my brother David 13 times, and our oldest son Nathaniel about 20 times already. So we end up in prison on concrete. Illegally, they kept us on concrete for 3 days and 2 nighs, banging on the doors every half hour, bright lights, no food, no nothing. I mean, it was difficult. On Monday, we were taken to the judge. The judge was a crooked guy, Adam Germain. It turned out that he was a politician for the Liberal Party, for the minions of Satan Party. Those are like your demon rats in the United States, but in Canada. And those people are vicious, wicked. They hate what is good. They hate God, and they hate democracy. They hate, freedom. They just absolutely hate it. They want to be the modern day, Pharaohs. So the judge started the proceedings by saying we're in the middle of this, and a pandemic and this and that and virus. And I said to my brother David, and you got to remember, we are shackled like animals, like terrorists there. And I said to David, look, he's not a judge. He is a reporter for the CBC, CNN. He's just a political, actor, and that's all. And I was right. He found us guilty on everything. Later on, we appealed it. We were free. Adam Germain, the crooked judge of Alberta, gave us an order, a compelled speech order. He said, every time you speak to another human, every time you do video sermon, you must, by this court order, you must recite government-approved script if it comes to masks, vaccinations, and the virus and all that stuff. And I grabbed the mic and I said, Judge, I hope you're listening. I'm not going to obey your orders. So if you want to send your sheriffs, I'm not hiding. I'm not running away. I refuse to obey this order. I'm a pastor.
That's great.
The truth, not your lies. And I'm not going to do it. Well, he was furious. We were arrested in and out of jail. And eventually, it takes me hours to tell the story. I just got back from Alabama and I was sharing my story and it took me 3 hours just to bring a little bit of the story. Eventually, we were part of the truck convoy. And I don't know if you remember the truckers.
I remember.
So I received a phone call, and the truckers, before they start rolling, they asked me to become their pastor. That's why they started to call me Canada's pastor, because I was organizing rallies. I was organizing church services at the Supreme Court, preaching at Ottawa Capitol, Parliament, you name it. I was everywhere. And we started with few people. By the time I was arrested, we had 20,000 people on the streets of Calgary and over 2 million people part of the truck convoy. So then I was asked to do a church services to a desperate Canadians. I went to the border, Milk River. I went to the Coots. Coots is point of entry, Sweetgrass from Montana, and Coots from our side, Alberta. And I did church. We had Lord's Supper. We were singing hymns, and I preached. And what did I say to people that scared them so much? Well, I told them there is more of us than of them. I told them, if you don't want to stand up for yourself, do it for your children. I told them, I've seen this movie before. We must change the script. I remember the Remedy, the solidarity movement in Poland in the 80s. I'm telling you, we can paralyze their system by simply refusal to cooperate with the wannabe tyrants, and do it for your children. Apparently, I don't particularly like my speech. I never listen to my podcasts and my speeches. I just don't. But apparently it was so good that people rose and spark hope in their hearts. And just a few days later, I stepped out of my house and I was arrested, charged with terrorism.
Terrorism.
The Canadian government, I have become the first Canadian ever to be charged with that charge, interfering with the crucial infrastructure under the Defense Act. I was charged with mischief over 5,000. I faced, I think, 12 and a half years of imprisonment, minimum, bogus charges. I was arrested, stripped naked, and I spent time in metal cages. They kept me in metal cages. Can you believe it? I'm a pastor. They would keep a pastor, no violence, not asking people to rise up in any violent or illegal way. Everything I did was perfectly legal under our Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the international laws as well. And yet I was charged with terrorism, and I was kept by the Canadian authorities in metal cages, solitary confinement, concrete cells. So at that time, I was told I was spent 2 years in solitary confinement and metal cages and concrete cells, no water, and no bed. It was the Bibles. Someone gave me a Bible in jail. The Bibles, I had two, were confiscated. My write-ups. So what I decided to do, if I'm going to spend 2 years in those harsh conditions, solitary confinement and really concrete cells that messed up my back, I will narrate the story. I will write down everything I see, everything I remember, and I'm going to let the world know what happened to this beautiful country, free country of Canada. So I started to write. They confiscated my manuscript for the book. 3 times my book was confiscated by the Canadian authorities. Can you believe it? 3 times we had to fight to get it back. And eventually my brave lawyer, she was able to smuggle my manuscript from jail to the world, and then we sent it to the American publishers, and they published it. And you can
wonderful.
You can get a copy of that book, the most hated, the most feared book in Canada. It's called Lions Do Not Bow. Lions Do Not Bow, and you can get it on Amazon.com for American people in the world, and then for Canadian people, Amazon.ca. Lions Do Not Bow. You know how the paper was given to me? Because they refused to give me a paper, the authorities. So inmates recognized me everywhere I went. I became a hero, literally a hero in prison. They were banging on the doors, yelling, "Free Pastor Art, free Pastor Art, free Pastor Art." They said to the guards, "Watch your back. If anything happens to this man, you watch your back." So I'm very grateful that I had such a huge support from the prisoners, because they recognize that I'm an innocent man being put there for nothing, just for standing by my convictions. And they would slip papers. In prison you get different documents that you can submit, and request forms they're called, and they would put those request forms under my door, so I can keep writing. And that's why the manuscript was, different colors, different papers, whatever I could grab, I would keep writing the story, the background story, why I yelled out those, in quote, nice officers, Nazis. You can find out in a book. And also mini sermons. I'm telling you, in a solitary confinement, your spiritual ears are more tuned to what the Spirit is actually saying. So now I perfectly understand the letters from prison, from Apostle Paul or from Martin Luther King Jr. It's fascinating, because there's no distractions over there. It's just you, pain, and God speaking, or sometimes being silent and you are speaking. It's quite fascinating. So the book is telling you every day what happened in prison, the metal cages, the background story, the threats, and eventually, if you know the story, I was kidnapped because I was so popular in Calgary, a remand center. I had every inmate in my unit listening to my sermons, coming to my door, asking for prayers. I was so crazy popular that they decided to literally kidnap me. So I was shackled like an animal, the Penguin March, and I was taken by sheriffs without the knowledge of my legal team, without the knowledge of my family, my wife. I was kidnapped hundreds of kilometers away to another city, and I was placed in MaxPot. MaxPot is the prison for the most dangerous terrorists. And I received a document over there that they will keep me here in cold, freezing conditions. They refused to give me an extra blanket. They said, laughing, that at least I have fresh air. I'm shivering. I was for sure. I thought I'm going to die here. And you got to remember that they talked to already 5 different inmates, giving them incentives in prison to murder me. Our house was lit on fire. They unscrewed tires in our pickup truck. Our church was vandalized for 3 months, every single week, broken into. They stole computers. They stole cameras, speakers. They've stolen everything we had valuable there multiple times. They lit the church on fire as well. And they burned down our children's bus. They lit my house on fire while the children were asleep in the middle of the night. I mean, so when threatened my life, they were really seriously considering to remove me. So in Edmonton, in that MaxPot prison, they told me they're going to keep me here in those freezing conditions indefinitely. So I had 30 minutes every day to make a phone call and to have a shower. So I called my wife and I said my goodbyes. I said, I think you're going to learn that I had a heart attack or something happened to me, or I killed myself, or whatever they're going to tell you. Don't believe them. They are trying to kill me here. So she panicked and she contacted the lawyers. Lawyers sent a letter to the judge. They panicked. And then I was taken from MaxPot, but you won't believe where they placed me. They put me in a psych ward without the evaluation of the doctors, without even knowledge of Alberta Health Services. I mean, insane. That's exactly what I saw communists and Nazis do to political dissidents, and during the time of the Nazi era, and of course, during the time that I was growing up in Poland. So that's what happened to me. It's incredible. But through the whole ordeal, God was with me. I would start church services. I would lay hands on the people. People were healed, believe it or not, and they were saved. I had the most hardcore criminals coming to my cell for prayers, and the tears coming, and I would pray for them.
Wonderful.
It's just incredible. All of that, you can find the accounts of what happened in that book, Lions Do Not Bow. Again, Lions Do Not Bow on Amazon.com or Amazon.ca. And I can talk about for hours, just what happened with the inmates over there. And one story I will give you, there was this young guy run over by a car. So he had a broken leg and the bones were separated. And he was scheduled for an operation. I said, before you go, I would like to pray for you. And I don't have the power to heal you, but I know someone that has the power, and I can ask him if he would like to heal you. So I prayed, and nothing happened. He goes next day to the doctor to be scheduled for the operation, and he comes back. He says, you won't believe what happened. You won't believe what happened. I said, I will believe what happened because I've seen it before many times. Well, the doctor took an x-ray, and the bones on their own moved back and reconnected. The bonds on their own reconnected together, and I don't need an operation. And I said, well, it's not me. Thank the one that did it, Jesus Christ of Nazareth. So those things were happening on a regular basis when I was in prison.
Welcome back to The Last Hope of Dying Republic. We are interviewing Pastor Artur Pawlowski from Canada, who is sharing his experiences with the now tyrannical government in Canada. The stories are just fascinating. God has done miraculous things in your life and through these really difficult experiences that you've had. But I know you could go on and on about what's happened with your experience in the prisons, but could you tell us what has been happening in Canada lately with your ministry, and how has the government changed? Has it turned around? Is it getting better? Is it improving?
Well, that's the thing. Before I answer this, again, we need to go back a little bit in time if it comes to Canada. Canada, just like United States of America, was formed by pilgrims. When pilgrims came, or immigrants, just like myself, but hundreds of years ago, they came to North America. They were escaping famine, they were escaping persecution. They came to North America for a new start, a better tomorrow, and they dedicated this land for God, to God. They went to their knees and they said, God, we're giving you this land. Would you become our God? That's the history of North America. And God honored that. He accepted, that invitation, and North America, and again, I'm including Canada and United States in this, became a region, a place for God. That's how our country started. I mean, our national anthem, Canadian national anthem, is a prayer to God. Prayer to God. God, keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. We got like 26 verses on the Peace Tower in Parliament to this day. So Canada was formed with the desire of God. We want to honor you with everything we're doing. And then, of course, time is passing. New government comes in, and that's the case historically, even with, Israelites. They had more evil kings than good kings. And of course, the book of Judges, it's a fascinating one because it ends and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. That's exactly Canada right now. So people became corrupted to the core, wicked, evil, and that was progressing for decades. And the church, unfortunately, I do not blame the Democrats or the liberals or the fake politicians, the wicked. I don't blame the darkness for not shining, but I do blame the light, the church for refusal to shine. Canadian church walked away from God and the gospel 40, 50, 60 years ago. And they became social clubs, entertainment centers. Me, I. It's all about have your best life now instead of going, what the churches are doing, come to us. We will give you an answer. Jesus went to the people. So it's a completely two different paths. And because they have been doing this for such a long time, the salt lost its saltiness and the light is not shining anymore. And when that happens, when an environment like this progresses, you have more wicked rulers every single cycle. So what happened in Canada, every cycle of election, instead of raising the bar, I'm talking about the church lowered the bar. And 40, 50 years ago, they would never elect someone that was sexually perverted or, messed up in the head like the politicians that we have right now, or standing for the murder of the innocent children. No, never. Right now, that's the norm. Actually, our politicians that we have right now are super proud of supporting homosexual perversion or transgender sickness or abortion. And the newest thing in the culture of death in Canada right now is the MAID, which is medical assisted suicide. Do you know that in Canada right now, within a few years, Canadian government murdered over 100,000 Canadians through assisted suicide? Wow. Over 100,000. So we murder over 100,000 children a year. Now we slaughtered 100,000 Canadians. And what the government is doing? Government is replacing them with the haters of democracy, haters of the republic, wicked, evil people that hate liberty, people that are coming from all over the world, not because they love what Canada was offering. They hate America. They hate our way of life, and they want to destroy it. And you can see it in England. If you don't believe me, you can see it in Ireland. You can see it in Sweden. You can see it in Australia, New Zealand, Germany, France, you name it. This is not an emigration. I am an immigrant. This is an invasion. We're dealing with invaders that hate us. They hate God. They hate freedom. So because of this, Canadian government is becoming more and more hostile to the Christians and to the liberties. So they're passing laws. See Bill C-9 that takes protection from the clergy, or other laws, conversion therapy laws that are penalizing anyone that preaches the truth. You got to remember, I have been arrested by the Calgary police for reading the Bible. Just reading the Bible. That's it. That was my crime. I faced a year of imprisonment. You got to remember, I was arrested and penalized criminally for feeding the poor, because they say the new laws are stating giving free goods and services are prohibited by law. I was invaded. Our church was invaded by Calgary police and the Bible services, and they confiscated our Bibles and gospel tracts because distribution of printed material in Canada is prohibited by law right now. I mean, insanity at the highest levels. And at the same time, Canadian government, are you ready, is giving free fentanyl to the poor, wiping them out. Thousands of homeless were murdered by the Canadian government. Agents of the government go through the streets giving free fentanyl. Government is giving free fentanyl to the poor. When I was in prison, and again, that's why I encourage you to read the most hated and the most feared book in Canada right now, The Lions Do Not Bow, because I am telling you what I observed in prison. 5 different highly addictive narcotics are being given twice a day to the prisoners. You watch a Hollywood productions and you think, okay, the drugs are being smuggled. No, not in Canada. Canadian government gives cocaine, fentanyl, and other highly addictive narcotics to the inmates twice a day. I was offered those drugs twice a day. It's insanity. I would see people snorting. I would see people taking. It's just insanity at the highest level, because Canada walked away from God. God is God of life. When you keep God of life out of your society, out of your country, the one that remains is the idol of death. And that's exactly what we have right now. That's why everything the Canadian government is doing is destroying Canadians. Economy is collapsing. Don't believe the propaganda. Economy is collapsing as we speak in Canada. Unemployment, young people have no future. Housing crisis, young people will never be able, Canadian youth will never be able to afford a house in Canada right now. Never. It's just they will never be able to afford to own a property. Canadians are under foreclosure. Thousands of Canadians are losing their properties. In Alberta, where I live, and you got to remember, Alberta was the hub of energy. We have more oil in Alberta, which is next to Montana, than Saudi Arabia. And yet we have a hostile government that hates this idea of us prospering, and we have the biggest defaulting on credit cards within the confederation. It's insanity. Half of downtown is empty. Businesses are closing. Thousands of restaurants. Everywhere you drive, it's foreclosure, or it's for lease, or for rent, or we are closing. Thriving businesses cannot afford the taxes. Canadians are forced to pay 55% in taxes right now, and they cannot afford. Kids cannot afford school. I mean, the school is crazy expensive. So Canada is collapsing. And when your president, Donald J. Trump, is saying fentanyl is coming through China, through Canada, I am testifying to you that's exactly what is happening. Through the ports of Vancouver, which is British Columbia, 99% of the ships are not even screened. Everything comes in because there is a war going on. Canadian government is hostile to the American government, and they want you dead. Fentanyl is aimed to destroy as many young Americans as possible, and it's coming through the native reserves freely, back and forth. Things are happening. And of course, terrorists. We got 500,000 Chinese troops in Canada already here, and being trained by the Canadian Armed Forces. And we have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of jihadists being trained and ready to attack United States of America. So we are in a big trouble. That's why we need your support. And even today, Bill, you tried to send me an email to this right now. I still didn't receive it. You had to text it to me because Canadian government is shadow banning us, is interfering with our ability to succeed, even though we feed thousands of people on the streets of Calgary every week. They are doing everything in their power to destroy us financially. Our donations are being messed with. Our websites, our links, our way of communicating the message. I got 70,000 on one account on Facebook, and when I go live, 2 people are watching or 5 people are watching. It's insanity. It's truly a repetition of history. Now we are living behind the Iron Curtain in China right now. So we need your support. If you have the means, if you have a way to support us, we are fighting for our lives. And why this should concern you? It should, because if Canada goes down, I hope you're listening, Americans. If Canada goes down, you're next. Canada is the target right now, but the ultimate target is United States of America. So you have to understand it's in your best interest to support people like us so we can fight in the trenches. I'm suing the Canadian government. We are still in court. And I'm going after the Attorney General. I'm going after the Chief of Police, Calgary Police, RCMP. That's like your FBI. I was arrested by our FBI, RCMP multiple times, charged with insane charges. I'm suing what they did to me in prison and Alberta Health Services because I believe in exposure. I believe that through the lawsuit, I'll be able to tell the people who did what and why it was done to you. So if you can, go to streetchurch.ca, because we are on the streets feeding the poor, streetchurch.ca, and support us because I don't know what else to do or say. We are fighting. We are willing to keep fighting. It's like my brother David always says, we are in the trenches and we are willing to shoot at the Germans, I mean the Nazis. But
streetchurch.ca.
But someone has to supply us with the bullets. And of course, I'm not talking about physical bullets.
Right.
I'm talking about finances that will enable us to keep paying the lawyers. I already spent $160,000 on this lawsuit already. They're opposing us. They are throwing roadblocks. They are stalling. They're trying to drain us out. But I know what God said to me and my wife. He said, I want you now to go after them, expose them. I believe, guys, we are in a season of great exposure. I believe that God is showing who is who in the zoo. He's exposing the fake churches, exposing fake politicians, the wolves, the sheep, and the goats. Now you can clearly see who truly trusts God, who truly believes, and who is fake, doing this for their own pleasure or benefit. So I want to encourage you, keep plowing. Remember the story of Daniel. Daniel was told not to pray. What did Daniel do? He opens the windows and he does what God commanded him to do 3 times a week. And he did not even lock the door. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Oh, know this, O great king, they said to Nebuchadnezzar, that our God is perfectly able to rescue us. But if he chooses not to, that's perfectly fine. But we will not bow before your golden image.
Amen.
The church must rise up, start doing what church was commanded to do, which is faith. Without faith, you cannot please God. Faith is the currency of heaven. So you must trust that God knows what he's doing, that he is going to support you, that he's greater than all of the uncircumcised Philistines combined together.
Amen. That's a good word.
What is the relationship between Canada and China besides the fentanyl that's being provided from China?
The government is in bed with China. We had about a dozen members of parliament that were caught being in bed with China, and the federal government refused to let the public know which ones were collaborating, which is a high treason with the Chinese government. Right now, we got a prime minister that is in bed with China for decades, not just right now. You got to remember, Carney was in charge of the banking in England. He destroys England, moves to United States. He moved his assets to New York, and then he was selected, because we don't have free elections anymore. They're using Dominion machine, just like they cheated you a few years ago. They use the same machines in Canada. So he was selected to be the prime minister, and he's now finishing Canada's economy. That's the purpose, to destroy Canada, destroy the middle class, and he's inviting Chinese operatives right here. In Canada right now, we already have Chinese police stations in different parts of Canada. So that's what's happening. Canada has, in my opinion, is the biggest threat to United States of America. It's not your southern border you should worry. It's the northern border that you should worry about.
And do you have Sharia law in any of your communities? I know there's a lot of Muslims in the cities. Is there? Well, is that not an issue?
There are some parts. For example, Toronto is on a regular basis shut down the streets because they've decided to pray in the middle of the streets. It's a show of force. It's a show of we own you, we rule you. And you got to remember, we were arrested for marching peacefully, and they are being protected by the police, blocking the streets. I was charged with terrorism for a sermon, telling people to do it lawfully. They are actually breaking the law, and they are being protected by the politicians, mainstream propaganda machinery, and the police officers. So if I was the king of Canada, those people would be charged with treason, because that's exactly what they're committing. They're committing acts of treason. But unfortunately, here's the problem. Americans, slowly but surely, are moving into the right direction. You're moving slowly towards God. Canadians, as a society, are going opposite. I think we have a whole month for the homosexual perversion. We got festivals. We got 3 days. We got 2 days. We got 1 day. I mean, we got more days appointed by the government to worship sexual perversion than any other group of people. I mean, we don't honor veterans, but the government is honoring sexual perversion. We got about 1 million people in Toronto that comes to worship sexual perversion, and they are allowed to walk naked all over the city during that time, and they're protected by the police. And I'm talking about naked in buses, in trains, in public parks, on the streets, protected by the authorities. So Canada has fallen. You have to understand, Canada has fallen, and the Canadian society is moving left instead of going right. Americans are moving right. So that's the difference.
Okay, Artur, please give us your website again.
It's
Repeat it for us.
www.streetchurch.ca. Streetchurch.ca.
ca.ca for Canada.
Yes.
Also, please, if you're listening to this, please visit our website, brrusa.org, for America's Black Robe Regiment website. I just want to say, Artur, we're in solidarity with you, man. I love what you're doing. I appreciate your courage, and thank you for standing up. I think, if people aren't willing to stand up, from where you are, they're not going to stand up when it comes here. And so we just need more people like you, brother. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And if you know any politicians, let them know what's happening. And I would be more than glad to come and testify before you politicians what's happening here, because I think they need to realize the threat.
Yes, it's definitely a threat. Ben Franklin said when he was asked, what kind of government do we have? A woman asked him, what kind of government do you have in America? And he said, a republic, if you can keep it.